The violet skies above Zelathi Prime crackled with unnatural fire as another city fell to the invaders. Elder Kira felt the death screams of her people echoing through her mind. Each telepathic cry of agony cutting deeper than any physical wound. Her elongated fingers trembled as she pressed them against the ancient crystalline communication array. The last functioning piece of technology in their underground refuge. "The children are gone," whispered Council Member Vera, her usually bright silver eyes now dim with grief. "The healing centers, the schools, everything we built over 1,000 years. All ash." Around them, the remaining members of the High Council huddled in the darkness. These were beings who had never known violence, who had spent their entire civilization perfecting the arts of peace, healing, and mental harmony. Their telepathic abilities allowed them to share emotions, to understand each other completely, to resolve conflicts through empathy rather than force. It had made them the most peaceful species in their sector of the galaxy. It had also made them completely defenseless. "How many worlds have they taken now?" asked Elder Finn, his voice barely a whisper. 17, Kira replied, her mental voice carrying the weight of billions of lost souls. 17 worlds, and we couldn't save a single one. The Kethra Empire had appeared without warning 3 years ago, their massive war fleets emerging from the void like hungry predators. They were everything the Zelathi were not: violent, aggressive, and utterly without mercy. Their technology was crude but effective, their ships built for one purpose: destruction. They didn't conquer worlds. It consumed them, stripping away everything of value before moving on to the next target. Above their heads, the ground shook as another bombardment began. The Kethfer were methodical in their destruction, taking their time to ensure nothing survived. They seemed to take pleasure in the fear they caused, broadcasting their victims' final moments across their communication networks as entertainment. "We have to try the old ways," Kira said, placing her hands on the communication array. "The ancient rituals our ancestors used to reach across the stars." But Elder protested Council Member Zale. "Those methods haven't been used for generations. We don't even know if they still work." "They have to work," Kira replied firmly. "We are the last world, the final stronghold of our people. If we fall, the Zelathis cease to exist." The crystalline array began to glow with soft blue light as Kira poured her telepathic energy into it. The other council members joined her there, minds linking together in a desperate attempt to amplify their signal. Together they reached out across the vast emptiness of space, sending their plea into the cosmic void. "To any who can hear us," Kira's mental voice carried across the galaxy, "we are dying. We are the Zelathi of the Inner Rim, and we are being destroyed by those who know only violence. We have never harmed another living being. We have no weapons, no armies, no knowledge of war. Seek only to live in peace, to heal, to create beauty in this universe. Please, if there are any merciful souls among the stars, help us. Save us from extinction." The message traveled through space, a telepathic cry for help that would take months to reach even the nearest star systems. But the Zelathi had learned to be patient over their long history. They had time to wait, time to hope. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, on a small blue planet, the signal found an unexpected receiver. Lieutenant Kim Tae had been monitoring deep space communications for 3 years, listening to the endless static of the cosmic background radiation. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Most nights, he sat alone in the Seoul Communications Center, surrounded by banks of sophisticated equipment that searched the stars for any sign of intelligent life. Tonight was different. The signal hit his receivers like a thunderclap, causing his equipment to screech with alien harmonics. Warning lights flashed across his control panel as the computers struggled to process the strange transmission. Kim Tae had never heard anything like it, a voice that seemed to speak directly into his mind, carrying emotions and images along with words. "Captain Park Jin, sir," he called out, his voice echoing through the facility. "I'm picking up something incredible." Captain Park Jin emerged from his office, still holding his evening coffee. He was a veteran of 20 years of military service, a man who had seen combat in 3 different conflicts. Nothing surprised him anymore, or so he thought. "What is it, Lieutenant?" he asked, settling into the chair beside Kim Tae. "It's a distress call, sir, but not like anything we've ever received. It's It's coming from deep space, and it's in our language somehow. The computers are translating it automatically. Park Jin studied the readouts with growing interest. The message was clear, despite its alien origin. An entire species begging for salvation from genocide. The transmission included images, beautiful crystal cities being reduced to rubble, peaceful beings fleeing in terror, children crying as their world burned. "Get me a secure line to command," Park Jin ordered, his military instincts taking over. "And wake up the linguistics team. We're going to need translators." As the message continued to play, both men felt a chill run down there. Somewhere in the darkness of space, an innocent civilization was dying. And their final act was to reach out for help from anyone who might listen. They had no idea that their cry for mercy had reached the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Briefing room deep beneath the Pentagon hummed with the quiet tension of predators planning their hunt. Admiral Lee Wan stood at the head of the massive oak table, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of multiple holographic displays showing distant star systems. Around him sat the most dangerous people on Earth, representatives from every major military power who had been secretly transported to this meeting within hours of receiving the alien distress call. "Gentlemen, ladies," Admiral Lee Wan began, his voice carrying the weight of decades of military command. 12 hours ago, we received a transmission from a species called the Zealothi. They're being systematically exterminated by an empire, known as the Kethver. The holographic display shifted, showing the translated message in multiple languages. The room fell silent as the desperate plea played through the speakers, carrying with it the telepathic emotions of a dying civilization. Colonel Kim Do, commander of South Korea's elite special forces, leaned forward in his chair. His scarred hands rested on the table as he studied the data with the cold calculation of a professional killer.
Nice.
"They're asking for mercy," he said quietly. "They want someone to save them with kindness and compassion. What they're going to get is something else entirely," replied Commander Alexei from the Russian Spetsnaz, his thick accent making his words sound even more menacing. The man had fought in 7 different conflicts across 3 continents, and his reputation for brutal efficiency was legendary even among his peers. British SAS Captain Harrison, a thin man with sharp eyes, pulled up additional tactical information. On his tablet, according to our analysis, the Kethver have been operating for several years now. They've destroyed 17 worlds, always using the same pattern of attack. They expect their enemies to be weak, to surrender easily. Dr. Song Min, the chief xenobiologist who had been studying the intercepted transmissions, activated another holographic display. The images showed the 2 alien species in detail, the peaceful Zealothi with their elongated limbs and large eyes, and the brutal Kethver with their thick armor and weapon-covered ships. "Zealothi are completely pacifist," Dr. Songmin explained, adjusting her glasses as she spoke. "They're herbivores who evolved from prey animals. Their entire culture is built around avoiding conflict. They have no concept of warfare, no weapons, no military structure at all." "And the Kethver?" asked German GSG-9 Commander Klaus, his massive frame filling his chair. "Predators, but not like us," Dr. Songmin continued. "They're strong and aggressive, but they rely on overwhelming force and intimidation. They've never faced an enemy that fights smart instead of hard. They expect their opponents to either surrender immediately or charge at them directly." Foreign Legion Colonel Butisa smiled grimly. "They've never encountered humans before." "Exactly," Admiral Lee Wan said, walking around the table as he spoke. "Every species they've conquered has been either peaceful, like the Zealothi, or aggressive, but predictable. They have no experience with guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, or strategic deception." Israeli Mossad operative Sarah, whose real name was known only to her immediate superiors, studied the technical readouts of Kethver equipment. "Their technology is advanced but crude. They build everything for direct confrontation. No stealth capabilities, no subtlety. They're like hammers looking for nails. Which brings us to our decision," Admiral Lee Wan continued. "The Zealothi have sent out a call for help. They want someone to come and save them with mercy and compassion. They're expecting angels." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These were people who had spent their entire careers studying the art of warfare, who had dedicated their lives to becoming the most efficient killers their respective nations could produce. Could send diplomats, suggested Japanese self-defense. Force Commander Tanaka, though his tone suggested he didn't believe in the option himself, asked ChatGPT. The Kethver don't negotiate, Admiral Lee Wan replied. They destroy everything they encounter. Diplomacy is not an option. Colonel Kim-do stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. My teams have been training for deep space operations. For 2 years, we have the equipment, the expertise, and most importantly, the mindset needed for this kind of mission. As do mine, added Commander Alexei. My soldiers have been preparing for unconventional warfare in hostile environments. This is exactly what we've been training for. Dr. Songmin pulled up new data showing the layout of Kethver ships and ground installations. Based on our analysis, they're completely unprepared for the type of warfare humans excel at. They expect enemies to announce themselves, to fight honorably, to follow rules. We don't fight honorably, Captain Harrison said with a cold smile. We fight to win. Admiral Lee Wan returned to his position at the head of the table. Zealothi are praying for merciful saviors to rescue them from their nightmare. They want someone to come and gently drive away the monsters that are hunting them. He paused, looking each person in the eye before continuing. Instead, they're going to get us. We're not going as peacekeepers or diplomats. We're not going to negotiate or show mercy to the Kethver. We're going as what we've always been, apex predators. The room filled with the quiet sound of weapons being checked and tactical equipment being prepared. Around the table, the deadliest humans on Earth began planning their hunt. Operation Nightfall is approved, Admiral Lee Wan announced. To deploy immediately. The darkness of space around Zealothi Prime's moon rippled like water as the human stealth ships dropped out of their cloaking fields. Commander Bei Sun stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, her eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the devastation below. The once beautiful planet looked like a dying ember, its surface scarred by bombardment and fire. Thermal imaging shows at least 50 Kethver ships in orbit, reported Lieutenant Park Hyo from her station. They're taking their time with the destruction. No urgency at all. Bei Sun nodded grimly. The Kethver had grown comfortable in their role as unstoppable predators. They had never faced an enemy that could match their brutality, let alone exceed it. That was about to change. All teams, this is Nightfall Command, she whispered into her communication device, her voice carrying to every human ship in the fleet. The hunt begins now. Remember, we are not here to save the innocent. We are here to eliminate the guilty. Through the bridge windows, she could see the enemy ships continuing their systematic bombardment of the planet below. Each blast of their weapons wiped out thousands of Zealothi civilians. But the Kethver seemed to be enjoying the process, taking breaks between attacks to broadcast their victims' final moments across their communication networks. On the surface of Zealothi Prime, the situation was even worse. The Kethver had established what they called processing centers, massive compounds where they herded the surviving Zealothi before eliminating them in groups. It was efficient, methodical, and completely without mercy. The alien soldiers moved through the ruins of Zealothi cities like tourists, their heavy armor clanking against the broken crystal structures. They were large creatures, nearly 3 meters, tall, with thick gray skin and multiple arms that ended in clawed hands. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but their body language spoke of complete confidence in their superiority. They had never encountered anything like the humans, who were now moving through the shadows around them. Sergeant Omin crouched, behind the twisted remains of what had once been a beautiful sculpture, his sniper rifle trained on the Kethver patrol moving through the street below. Through his scope, he could see 3 enemy soldiers dragging a group of terrified Zealothi children toward one of the processing centers. Command, this is Ground Team Alpha, he whispered into his radio. I have eyes on a priority target, Kethver. Patrol leader with insignia indicating high rank. Take the shot, came the reply from Commander Bei Sun, but make it silent. We want them confused, not alert. Omin adjusted his scope and squeezed the trigger. The specially designed bullet pierced the Kethver commander's helmet. The alien dropped to the ground without a sound. His companions stopped, looking around in confusion as their leader suddenly collapsed. What happened? One of them asked in their harsh language, which the humans had learned to understand during their preparation. I don't know, replied the other. He just fell down. Private Kim Jae, who had been moving through the ruins like a ghost, struck from behind. His knife found the weak point in the second Kethver's armor, sliding between the plates and into the creature's vital organs. Alien died without making a sound, its body crumpling to the ground. The third Kethvar spun around, trying to locate the source of the attack, but found only empty ruins and shadows. Fear began to creep into its movements as it realized it was alone with a group of terrified prisoners and no idea what had happened to its companions. Base. This is Patrol 7. It spoke into its communication device. We have a situation here. Commander Victor is down, and so is Warrior Nethgul. I don't see any enemies, but something is wrong. The response came back filled with static and confusion. Patrol 7, clarify your situation. Are you under attack? I don't know. The surviving Kethver replied, its voice rising in panic. They just ... disappeared. Meanwhile, across the city, similar scenes were playing out as human. Special Forces teams moved through the Kethver positions like shadows. The aliens had never faced an enemy that fought from concealment, that struck without warning, killed silently, and vanished without a trace. Corporal Lina watched from a rooftop as a group of Kethver soldiers searched frantically through the ruins below, trying to find their missing comrades. Their movements were clumsy and predictable, driven by fear rather than training. They're not used to being hunted, she reported to her team leader. They don't know how to react when they're not the predators anymore. Good, replied Sergeant Omin. Fear makes them stupid. Stupid enemies are dead enemies. Yeah, the Kethver had spent years perfecting their techniques for terrorizing helpless civilizations. They knew how to instill fear in their victims, how to break the will of peaceful species, how to make entire populations surrender without a fight. But they had never been on the receiving end of such treatment. Now, as their soldiers began disappearing one by one, as their communication networks filled with panicked reports and unexplained casualties, the Kethver were learning what it felt like to be prey. They were discovering that somewhere in the galaxy, there existed creatures even more dangerous than themselves, and those creatures had just arrived. On Zelathi Prime, the massive command ship of the Kethver fleet floated in the darkness above. Zelathi Prime, its bridge filled with the nervous chatter of confused officers. Grand Admiral Dekvar, a towering creature with 4 arms and skin like ancient leather, stood before the main tactical display with growing unease. His yellow eyes studied the incoming reports from the surface, each one more disturbing than the last. Admiral, his aide whispered, approaching with visible fear, the ground forces are reporting impossible things. They say shadows are killing our soldiers. Entire patrols are vanishing without any sign of battle. Dekvar's clawed hands gripped the edge of the display console. In 50 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. The Kethver Empire had destroyed hundreds of worlds, faced dozens of different species, and always emerged victorious through superior firepower and ruthless tactics. But this was different. Show me the communications, he ordered. The bridge. Speakers crackled to life with panicked voices from the surface. Base, this is Sector 7. We found Commander Victor's body, but there are no wounds. His neck is. It's twisted completely around. Patrol 12 reporting. Our entire forward position is gone. No explosions, no weapons fire. They just ... disappeared. Something is hunting us. It moves through the shadows like death itself. What the Kethver didn't know was that every word they spoke was being recorded by Lieutenant Kim Soo and her cyber warfare team aboard the human stealth ship hidden in the asteroid belt. Kim Soo sat surrounded by screens showing the enemy communication networks, her fingers dancing across keyboards as she worked her electronic magic. Beautiful, she whispered to her team as another panicked transmission came through. There. Doing half our work for us. Every scream, every death rattle, every moment of terror is being broadcast to their entire fleet. Her partner, Sergeant Parkday, looked up from his own workstation. The psychological impact is already showing. Their communication discipline is breaking down. They're abandoning standard protocols. Kim Soo smiled coldly as she uploaded another batch of recordings to the Kethfer internal networks. Let them hear what happens to their soldiers. Fear is our best weapon, and they're giving us plenty of ammunition. The recordings began playing automatically on every Kethfer ship in the fleet. The sound of their own warriors dying in confusion and terror filled the bridges of mighty warships. Crews that had never known fear suddenly found themselves looking over their shoulders, jumping at shadows, questioning every strange noise. What kind of enemy kills without showing themselves? Whispered one Kethfer officer to another. Maybe they're not enemies at all, came the reply. Maybe they're demons. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Captain Yunhei prepared to show the Kethfer what real demons looked like. Her strike force of human warships had been waiting in the darkness beyond the enemy fleet's sensor range, studying their formations and identifying weaknesses. All ships, this is Strike Command, she spoke into her headset, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had spent years preparing for this moment. The enemy is distracted by events on the surface. They attack now while they're focused on their fears. The human ships were nothing like the massive Kethfer vessels, where the aliens built their craft for intimidation and overwhelming firepower. Humans had designed theirs for stealth, speed, and precision. They struck from the darkness like predators, their weapons targeting the enemy's most vulnerable points. The first Kethfer ship to die never even saw its attackers. A spread of human missiles penetrated its shields and tore through its hull, causing massive explosions that lit up the night. Before the other ships could react, 2 more vessels were already burning in space. We're under attack, screamed a Kethfer communications officer. Unknown ships are firing on the fleet. But when they turned their sensors toward the source of the attack, they found only empty space. The human ships had already disappeared back into the void, leaving behind only wreckage and confusion. Admiral Dekvar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. How are they moving without being detected? Our sensors should pick up any ship within 100,000 kilometers. Sir, his weapons officer reported, I'm detecting energy signatures that don't match any known technology. These ships are using some kind of stealth system we've never encountered. Another explosion rocked the fleet as a Kethfer cruiser split in half, its crew screaming as they were sucked into the vacuum of space. The human attack was methodical, surgical, designed to cause maximum damage while remaining nearly invisible. They're not fighting like any species we've faced before, Dekvar growled. They don't announce themselves. They don't demand surrender. They don't try to intimidate us. They just ... kill. On the surface, the human ground teams continued their silent war against the Kethfer occupation forces. Bodies piled up in the shadows, each death adding to the growing panic among the alien soldiers. They had become the hunted, and they didn't know how to cope with the reversal? What are we fighting? One terrified Kethfer soldier asked his commander. I don't know, came the reply. But whatever they are, they're not civilized. They're monsters. The irony was lost on the Kethfer. For years, they had been the monsters, bringing death and destruction to peaceful worlds. Now they were discovering what it felt like to be on the receiving end of something even worse than themselves. In the darkness of space and the ruins of Zealothi Prime, humanity had revealed its true nature. They were not the saviors the Zealothi had prayed for. They were apex predators, and they had come to hunt. The last Kethfer warship disappeared into the darkness of space, its hull scarred by human weapons and its crew broken by fear. Behind it, the system that had once echoed with the screams of the dying now fell silent. The siege of Zealothi Prime was over. But the silence felt more ominous than the previous chaos. Elder Kira stood in what remained of her city's central square, surrounded by the crystal ruins of buildings that had taken centuries to grow. Beautiful spires that had once reached toward the sky now lay shattered like broken dreams. The air still smelled of smoke and death, constant reminder of how close her people had come to extinction. She felt them before she saw them. The strange cold minds that had driven away the Kethfer, their mental presence was unlike anything she had ever encountered. where Zealoty minds were warm and open, sharing thoughts and emotions freely. These creatures kept their thoughts locked away behind walls of steel and ice. The first human soldier emerged from the shadows between the ruins, his face hidden behind a dark helmet. Then another appeared, and another, until dozens of them stood in the square like ghosts materializing from the void. They moved with the fluid grace of natural predators, their weapons held ready, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Their leader stepped forward, removing his helmet to reveal a face that could have been carved from stone. To General Nam. He looked like a man who had seen too much death and had learned to find comfort in it. His dark eyes studied Elder Kira with the same intensity a hunter might use to evaluate wounded prey. "Your prayers have been answered," he said simply, his voice carrying no warmth or compassion. "The Kethvar are gone. They will not return." Elder Kira's telepathic abilities allowed her to sense the emotions radiating from the humans around. What she found there made her step backward in horror. These beings felt no joy at having saved her people, no satisfaction at having prevented genocide. Instead, she sensed only cold calculation, professional pride in a job well done, and, underneath it all, a predatory satisfaction that chilled her to the bone. "At what cost?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. General Namki's expression didn't change. "The cost of survival. Your species sent out a call for help. We heard it. We came. Understand this clearly, we are not your saviors. We are your protectors, and protection comes with a price." Around the square, other Zealoty survivors began to emerge from their hiding places. They moved slowly, cautiously, their large eyes wide with a mixture of relief and growing fear. They had expected their rescuers to be like themselves, peaceful, compassionate, driven by a desire to help others. Instead, they found themselves facing creatures that radiated danger, like heat from a fire. "What do you want from us?" the Elder Kira asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Cooperation," Namki replied. "Your technology, your knowledge, your loyalty. In return, we will ensure that nothing like the Kethvar ever threatens you again." The meaning was clear. The Zealoty had traded one form of domination for another. They had called for angels and received demons, beings who would protect them but would never let them be truly free, far across the galaxy. The story of what had happened at Zealoty Prime spread like wildfire through the communication networks of 100 different species. The Kethvar survivors, traumatized and broken, broadcast warnings about the Deathworld demons that had appeared from nowhere to destroy their mighty fleet. "They don't fight like civilized beings," one Kethvar commander transmitted to his superiors. "They strike from shadows, kill without warning, show no mercy to anyone. They are monsters wearing the faces of thinking creatures." Species, those who had been planning their own campaigns of conquest, suddenly found themselves reconsidering their strategies. If the mighty Kethvar Empire could be broken so completely by these unknown beings, what hope did anyone else have? The peaceful species, meanwhile, looked to the stars with new hope. Perhaps there were protectors out there after all, guardians, who would stand between them and the predators that stalked the galaxy. They began sending their own messages into space, calling for the same help that had saved the Zealoty. On Earth, Admiral Li Wan sat in his office reviewing the mission reports. From Operation Nightfall, the numbers were impressive. An entire Kethvar fleet destroyed with minimal human casualties. Their ground forces eliminated to the last soldier, their empire sent fleeing in terror. It was a complete victory by any measure. The operation was a success, he told the assembled military leaders during their debriefing. "We have established humanity's reputation as the apex predators of this galaxy. Other species will think twice before acting aggressively, knowing that we are watching." "And the Zealoty?" asked Colonel Kim Du. "They understand their position," Admiral Li Wan replied. "They are alive because we allow them to be alive. They are free because we permit them to be free. They will serve our interests because they have no choice." The galaxy had learned a new truth that day. The Zealoty had prayed for mercy, for compassionate saviors who would rescue them from their nightmare and then disappear. leaving them to rebuild their peaceful civilization. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous: humanity's capacity for protective violence. The monsters were loose among the stars now, and they wore human faces. The galaxy would never be the same, and somewhere in the darkness of space, other species were beginning to realize that their prayers for salvation might come with a price they were not prepared to pay.